All right. We are today going to learn about the second part of the Roman Republic, and this time it's about a huge, epic set of three wars that are known as the Punic Wars, and I'll get more into that in a second. This is going to be the biggest conflict that Rome gets into. It's one of its most famous battles over time. There's lots of interesting little tidbits. Elephants are involved. Yes, I didn't misspoke. I didn't misspeak. I just misspoke. I'm so excited to tell you there are elephants involved in this war. So, I know. Here we go. It starts off with this. Rome set up their republic, their style of government. So they're like, now we have to protect it. So they start thinking, and they're like, we had to hold off the Etruscans from attacking us once. What if the Etruscans crossed the Tiber River and attacked us again? So to make sure that doesn't happen, let's conquer them because we can. That would be like the United States being like, all right, Canada and us are cool right now, but what if 50 years in the future, Canada's crazy and they attack us, so we might as well take them over now. So Rome is very paranoid, and they don't just start with their neighbors. They eventually, by 275 BCE, conquer all of Italy, and they're going to get to a point when they become an empire that they control most of the Mediterranean world. And the way they're able to do this is through their army. They have a really strong army that is organized into legions. So there would be groups of 5,000 soldiers. Those were called legions. And if you were a soldier in a legion, you were known as a legionary. That's why they're called legions. And the whole army in total had 30 legions. So if you do that math, 30 legions times 5,000 soldiers in each one is around 150,000 troops, which is a lot. Now, inside of each group of 5,000, it's divided up into 10 different groups called cohorts. So it's about 480 legionaries in each cohort. Now, if you did that math, you might be thinking like, well, where is so 480 legionaries times 10 cohorts, that's 4,800 legionaries. Where's the other 200? Well, those are like the leadership people, like the generals and things like that. Now, inside of each cohort, so inside of each group of 480 legionaries, there are 6 centuries. So a century is about 80 legionaries, and there's a centurion that is in charge of it. So I know that's very confusing. It's like one of those dolls that's big, and then you like open it, and there's a smaller doll, and then you open it, and there's a smaller doll, and so on and so on. It's kind of like that. So here's how this works. So if you are a Roman legionary, right, you're part of a century, which is about 80 people, and you're led by a centurion. Okay? Your group of 80 people is also part of a cohort that is made up of 6 other centuries. The cohort is then part of a legion that's made up of 5,000 different soldiers, and there's about 30 legions in total. So think of it this way, right? This is another way to kind of think about it. The century would be like your individual class in school, right? The cohort would be like grade 6. The legion that you're in would be like Leonia Middle School. And then the whole army in total would be our whole school district. So that's another way to think about it. All right, now, this idea of a legion has lots of advantages over a phalanx. So that Greek fighting system, the phalanx, there's something that beats it. It's this Roman legion. So the legions are smaller in terms of the number of troops, and they can move faster. Now, picture it this way. A phalanx moves together in one group. A legion is like a phalanx that can split off and attack from the sides. So instead of moving all together in one group, a legion can kind of like imagine the sides of a group popping out, going to attack, and popping back. So it has its definite advantages. Now, legionaries are really well trained. They spend hours practicing and they go on long marches every day as they're conquering new lands. Before they went to sleep, they would build camps that are like forts for protection. And as they're traveling, they're building roads from where they just went from so that soldiers and supplies could move faster. So as Rome's expanding, it's building lots of roads, which is where you may have heard of this phrase. It's a common phrase, but might not be common to a sixth grader. That phrase is all roads lead to Rome. And essentially what that phrase means in today's society is eventually we all come to the same part, or the same point. And it, its origin is the fact that like, even though Rome is expanding, they're building roads that all go directly to Rome. Now, people who the Romans conquered are treated pretty well. They're expected to join the army, and a lot of people do. So, and Rome is going to need that army for this showdown known as the Punic Wars. Now, you might be thinking, that's an interesting word, Punic. Well, Punic is the Latin word for Phoenician. So that's where that comes from. So essentially it means the Phoenician Wars. Now you might be thinking, Phoenicians? What the heck? That was like November. Why are we talking about them? Well, because this battle is going to have to do with the old Phoenician colony known as Carthage. All right, so here's the story. By about 264 BCE, Rome decides we might not have enough food if an emergency happens. Sound familiar? So they want granaries as a backup. And you might remember from our study of Egypt, granaries are what? Yes, that is correct. If you said places to store grain. Now, instead of starting their own granaries, Rome is like, why don't we just take over some granaries? And they have this idea of working with Greeks that lived on half of the island of Sicily. I'm going to show you a map in a second. The other half of the island belonged to Carthage, and their side has the granaries. So let me get to, I'm in the wrong section. So we get to play Mr. Gujik's computer lags when he's looking at pictures. All right, so this kind of sets it up. So here in red is the Roman Republic. This is them taking over all of Italy. In purple is the Empire of Carthage. They're descendants of the Phoenicians. And if you're wondering, oh, purple, did the map people do that on purpose? Yes, they did, because of the whole purple dye thing. So here's the island of Sicily. And over here is the Greek-controlled part of Sicily in a city-state called Syracuse. And some of you might be thinking, Syracuse, New York? Yes, Syracuse, New York is named after this island in Sicily. All right, so here's the story. Rome is like, we're going to need a backup plan if emergencies happen and we need food. We need to start saving for granaries. And then the Senate is like, why don't we just conquer some places and take their granaries? So here's what Rome does. Rome goes over here to Syracuse, and they say to the people there, we're interested in getting some granaries. Do you know where any is? And the people in Syracuse are like, well, Carthage has some granaries over here on the other side. So the Romans are like, interesting. Well, here's what happens next. Carthage, as you saw from that map, isn't just this city-state here. They have a good chunk of Sicily. They have these islands here, Corsica and Sardinia. They control most of northern Africa. They even get a little bit of what is today Spain. So they've got a good handle over here on a good chunk of the western part of the Mediterranean region. All right. Well, the Greeks that were living in Sicily after the Romans leave, after the Romans are like, oh, Carthage has the granaries? Interesting. Well, the Greeks say to Carthage, Rome was just talking about getting some granaries. And Carthage is like, our granaries? And the Greeks are like, sounds like it. And Carthage is like, oh, prepare for war. The Greeks then, they're such instigators, these Greeks on the island of Sicily, right? The Greeks then go to the Romans and they're like, hey, what's up? And the Romans are like, so what's going on with those granaries? Like, Carthage has them, right? And the Greeks are like, yeah, and just so you know, Carthage is planning for war against you. And the Romans are like, what? Planning for war against us? We're going to do something. We're going to stop it. And what they say to the Greeks, they're like, okay, we're going to make a deal with you. We're going to give you tons of gold and supplies if you let us hang out in your side of Sicily. So the Roman and Greeks make that deal. Carthage is furious when the Romans land on Sicily. Carthage is like, that's it. They're attacking, they're invading. And here we have the First Punic War. So let me explain that with this map. So the granaries are over here on Sicily. Rome is like, it'd be nice if we had some granaries. We're looking to take some granaries. And they say to the Greeks over here, like, I don't know, maybe one day we'll take granaries. I don't know, we're just thinking about it. And then the Greeks here go to Carthage and be like, and they're like, Rome's thinking about taking your granaries. And Carthage is like, that's it, war. And then Rome and the Greeks start talking, and the Greeks are like, Carthage is preparing for war. So Rome says, we're going to give you golden supplies. Let our military onto Sicily on your side. So the Greeks are like, all right, deal. So the Romans come over here, and Carthage is like, they're invading, war. And then here we have the First Punic War. All right. Now, the main reason that Rome and Carthage go to war in this First Punic War is Rome wanted Carthage's granaries on Sicily, and Carthage was getting ready to defend their granaries. Well, Carthage has a really strong navy, and Rome has a really strong army. Now, that sounds a little bit like another war we studied this year. What war am I talking about? If you said the Peloponnesian War, you were correct. How Athens had the really strong navy against Sparta that had the really strong army. Well, Rome's navy stinks. But Rome is like, well, in order to fight Carthage, there's a sea here. We're going to need a navy. So Rome is like, let's build a navy. And they get so lucky because as they are about to use a navy, a Carthaginian, that's somebody from Carthage, warship washes up on their shores, like it was like damaged in the storm, and like the Romans see the empty ship and they're like, we're gonna copy the Carthaginians and make our ships just as good as theirs with one better thing. They add something called a corvus, which is a movable bridge to the front of the ship. So I'm going to show you a picture of what that is. So this is a little model of a Roman ship. So this is the corvus. So it would come up like this when it wasn't going to be used. And then what would happen is the Romans would sail near the Carthaginian ships, put down their corvus, and you could see this is like a huge metal spike that would like go smashing into the Carthaginian ship, almost like a hammer and a nail. So they can't just like lift up the bridge. It's like stuck. And then the Roman army, the Roman legionaries, would run across the bridge and fight the Carthaginians one-on-one. So what this Corvus did is pretty amazing. Rome had to fight Carthage in a naval battle because Carthage is across the sea, but Rome has a stinky navy. But with the Corvus, Rome turns a navy battle into the kind of battle that you need army skills. So the Romans knew they couldn't win a navy war, so by using the Corvus, they figured out a way to turn a sea battle into one where the soldiers would need good one-on-one fighting skills. And because the Romans had better one-on-one fighting skills than the Carthaginians, this Corvus was the key to Roman victory in Punic War One. Now, the war lasted 23 years. Let's just kind of put that into perspective. That is like a war starting in 1997 and ending now. And as part of the deal, the Romans, they defeat Carthage, and in the peace deal, Rome gets control of 3 islands in the Mediterranean Sea. They get Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica. Now, I'm going to show you on my map here why that's a big deal. So Rome, as part of the peace deal, gets, oh no, well, you get the idea. Imagine my box. Let me make my box better. Let's make my. And if you're wondering what about the Greeks, yeah, they're part of Rome now. All right, so. All right, imagine my box doesn't have this, but these 3 islands, Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica, and it's strategy here because these 3 islands have granaries. So now Rome has that backup food supply it wanted. And also, it has protection because with Rome controlling these 3 islands, their Corvus ships can kind of patrol all around them. So if anyone wanted to attack Rome from the sea, the Roman Navy would be able to stop them because they have control of all this. So Punic War One is a big victory for Rome, but it lasted 23 years. Now, we're going to kind of go back and forth between 2 different sets of notes, just like when we were doing some other wars and major battles and things like this. I had a chart that broke things down. So I'm going to give you now the long story short of what I just said. So, Punic Wars. Punic War One lasted 23 years, and you see what I did there? If you're like XXIII, what is that? It's Roman numerals because Rome. So yeah. So Punic War One lasted 23 years. Here is the long story short of it. Rome started it. Why? Because they wanted granaries. Carthage has a strong navy. Rome has a strong army. Rome finds a way to use a Corvus, that's that bridge thing, to turn a battle at sea into one where you need one-on-one fighting. So Rome wins Punic War One and gets Sicily, Corsica, and Sardinia, those 3 islands that have the granaries. All right, now, Punic War Two is probably one of the most famous wars in ancient history. And it involves this guy, Hannibal. He is a Carthaginian general, and he is a crazy good strategist. So, here's what goes down. Now, in 218 BCE, the Second Punic War gets started by Hannibal Barca. That's his full name, Hannibal Barca. And he's a Carthaginian general. And he grew up listening to his dad tell stories about Punic War One. So his dad, Hamilcar Barca, he would say to Hannibal, like, oh my God, the Romans are trash. I hate them so much. When you get old, you have to fight them. So throughout Hannibal's whole life, Hannibal and Hannibal's brother, Hasdrubal, throughout Hannibal's life, he is told by his dad how much Rome stinks and how he needs to do something about it. So when Hannibal gets to a position of power, he's like, this is for you, Dad. I'm going to do something about it. Well, here's what he does. Hannibal's plan is to attack Rome from the north. Now, let's just show you what that means. Here's Carthage. Here's Rome. Attack from the north means going this way. Okay? Now, you might be thinking, all right, that's a cool plan. But what's not labeled on this map is in Italy, there is a mountain range over here known as the Alps. Hannibal's plan, he's going to cross it. Also, it's not like he could just sail across the sea and attack Rome to the north. Oh, no. He's going this way, which means he's got to cross what is now known as the Strait of Gibraltar and then huff it all the way through the Alps and down. So this is Hannibal's plan. Sounds insane. Here's another thing. Hannibal and his troops, their plan is this. They're going to surprise the Romans by marching across Spain into Gaul, and just to show you, Gaul over here is what is today France, and then attack the Romans from the north. And they bring elephants. This is the part I was telling you about. They bring elephants with them to try and break the Roman legions. So here's a picture of these war elephants that Hannibal has. Now, here's his strategy. The Roman legions, they don't see it. Like, you're in Italy, you don't see elephants. So what happens a lot of times is this. The legion obviously is together like a phalanx, but then can split apart. Well, the thing that's going to stop a legion is charging elephants coming at a group, because if there's charging elephants coming at a group and that group doesn't move, that group gets squashed and trampled by the elephants. So Hannibal's plan is to break up the legions with these charging elephants, and then he figures the Romans can't fight together and they'll be easy pickings. So here's what Hannibal does. I'm going to switch to my next map. So here's what Hannibal does over here. So he goes across here. He crosses the Strait of Gibraltar. He had about 37 war elephants with him. They get to Spain. Oh, by the way, P.S. Carthage took over a little more of Spain because they had granaries. Because remember how these granaries now belong to Rome? So Carthage is like, we need some granaries. Let's go take Spain. So they go over here to Gaul, and Gaul's like, whoa. What are you doing? And Hannibal is like, we're going to go kill some Romans. We hate Rome. And Gaul is like, yeah, we don't like Rome too. So the people from Gaul are like, how are you going to kill Romans? Like, the Alps are here. And Hannibal's like, we're going to cross the Alps. And Gaul's like, with elephants? Hannibal's like, yeah, you want to come? You want to help us defeat the Romans? And Gaul's like, cool. If you survive crossing the Alps with all these elephants, then you could call us and then we'll help you. So Hannibal's like, all right, catch you later. And Gaul thinks like, Hannibal, this is over. This is a horrible idea. Now, another reason Hannibal brought these elephants is these elephants can carry lots of different things, as you see in these pictures. So on these 37 war elephants, he had equipment that he was going to use to bust down the city walls of Rome. That was his plan. So he's going to have the elephants scatter the legions and then use the heavy equipment that the elephants are carrying to bust down the city of Rome. And then Hannibal would be like, we win. Well, there's a problem. Here's what happens. There are mountain people, like natives that live in the Alps up here. They've never seen elephants before because they live in the mountains. And these are elephants native to Africa because Carthage is located in modern-day Tunisia. Like, what is an African country? Yeah. So these African elephants get into the Alps, And the cold weather freaks them out, obviously. And the mountain people are like, oh my gosh, it's a monster attack. And the mountain people are attacking Hannibal and his troops and his war elephants. So, because of fighting in the mountains with the local mountain people, most of the war elephants, and they were the ones that were carrying the heavy equipment needed to bust down the city walls, die. There was only like a couple that survived. Not enough heavy equipment to go through Hannibal's plan. Hannibal then sends word to Gaul and says, we made it. You coming? And Gaul is like, wow, you actually survived? All right, we're going to send you a whole bunch of troops and we're going to help you with the Romans. But Hannibal is like, well, just so you know, I'm the boss here. And Gaul's like, cool. We just want Rome taken out as a threat. All right. Now, Hannibal then is going to attack the Roman legions up and down Italy. Now, the people like that are up here, if you were a brand new legionary, your first assignment would be like guard the Alps, because the Romans are like, nobody's coming from there. Let's stick the noobs there. So the noob soldiers would guard the Alps. So Hannibal comes out of the Alps and like slaughters those legions because they don't know what they're doing. Then gets more troops from Gaul, and they start kicking Roman butt up and down Italy, going back and forth. But Hannibal can't get into the city of Rome because he doesn't have the equipment to bust it down. So Hannibal wins every single battle for 15 years against the Romans. So for 15 years, Hannibal is going up and down Italy, defeating the Romans. Battle after battle after battle for 15 years. Undefeated for 15 years. So here's his route. So Hannibal goes across here, through the Alps down, and then here's the 15 years of butt kicking that goes on. Well, Carthage can't, as I said, can't take down the city of Rome because they don't have the heavy equipment. So the Romans are able to keep their, survive all this because of the granaries. So like Rome can't get out and use its farmland, but because Rome controls these 3 islands, all the granaries that Rome needed as emergency food supply can go into Rome without Hannibal being able to stop them. So if you're like, well, why can't Carthaginian ships just attack? Well, because that was Punic War 1 and Rome defeated them. So Carthage isn't about to make the same mistake. So Hannibal's plan is like, eventually Rome's going to surrender because I've been doing this for 15 years. And Rome is like, we're going to hold out and try and beat him. But worst case scenario, we got granary food. Well, after 15 years, that granary food starts to run out. So Rome has to come up with a plan. So Rome makes the very bold decision to do this. Their plan is to sail with their navy across the Mediterranean Sea into the mainland of Carthage and start attacking Hannibal's homeland. Now, most of the Carthaginian army is with Hannibal kicking butt up and down Italy. Rome is then attacking the homeland, and Rome is kicking butt here. So word gets to Hannibal like, dude, if you take Rome, that's great and everything, but Rome's going to take Carthage, and then that's just weird. So Hannibal and his troops sail back, going this way, and Hannibal loses for the first time ever at a battle located in the city of Zama. Now, it's like this. Hannibal was undefeated, but the biggest loss ever was at the Battle of Zama. And I'm going to compare it to something that happened many years ago. So, New England Patriots, there was one season they were undefeated in the regular season. They were 16-0. They get to the playoffs. They win all of their playoff games, and then they get to the Super Bowl. And they lost the Super Bowl to the New York Giants. So go Giants. So even though they were undefeated all that time, they lost the biggest game and didn't win the championship. So that's kind of like Hannibal. Hannibal is like the Patriots that season. He was undefeated for 15 years, but then lost at the Battle of Zama, and it cost him to lose the war. Now, Hannibal goes on the run. He actually flees all the way to Syria. You can't see that here. Oh, you can't see that here either. So let me pull up this map. So Hannibal's like, peace out. The Romans aren't going to kill me. I'm going to run away. And he goes all the way over here to what is today Syria. And what happens is to him is horrifying, but I'll talk about that more in a second. The Romans chase Hannibal all the way to Syria, and Hannibal does not want the Romans to kill him. So as he's hiding, the Roman troops are closing in on him. He decides, you know what? I would rather poison myself than have a Roman kill me. So he does that. He poisons himself. And then the Romans find his dead body and they're like, all right, Carthage is done. Now, interesting fact about Hannibal, this is pretty gross. When he was in the Alps, he got frostbite in his eye. I know, disgusting. So he lost the sight of one eye, so he wore like an eye patch as well. Now, Punic War Two is over. Carthage has to pay Rome a huge amount of money as part of the peace deal and give up their granaries on Spain. Now, the reason why they have to give up the granaries in Spain is because Rome had these granaries, but they used them all while they were getting attacked for 15 years. So Rome needs granaries themselves, so they're like, yoink, these belong to us now. Now, Rome, by controlling that part of Spain, gets gold, copper, lead, and iron, all these natural resources. Now, this war lasted 17 years, and here's why it lasted 17 years. It took Hannibal 2 years to get from Carthage to Italy. So there was 2 years and then 15 years of fighting. So in total, that's 17 years. All right. So before we get to Punic War 3, let's go back to this other chart. Here's your long story short of Punic War 3. And oh my gosh, so many bullet points. Aren't you glad you're not writing this in class? Because if this was class, I could hear already people like, oh, it's so much writing. So, Punic War 2, I used Roman numerals again, lasted 17 years. Carthage started, it wants me to use past tense. Sure, we'll make it past tense for you, Google. Rome started Punic War 2. Why? They wanted revenge. Rome conquered Spain to replace the granaries that they lost to Rome. Oh, did I say Rome conquered Spain? I'm sorry. Carthage conquered Spain to replace the granaries they lost in Punic War 1. Hannibal Barca is the leader of Carthage. He attacks Rome from the north. He lost troops and elephants in the Alps fighting the mountain people. He gets help from Gaul. He attacks Italy for 15 years, never loses a battle. Rome then goes on the offense and attacks Carthage. They defeat Hannibal at Zama, and as a result, they win Punic War 2 and get Spain. So, Punic War 1, Rome started it, Rome wins. Punic War 2, Carthage starts it this time, Rome still wins. So, we move on to the Third Punic War. So, there was peace for about 50 years between Rome and Carthage. And Carthage made a trade deal with the Greek city-state of Corinth. And Rome is furious. Rome says to Corinth, like, what are you doing? Carthage is going to get supplies and then they're going to attack us again and then we're going to have an issue. And Corinth in Greece is like, not our problem. We made a business deal. What are you going to do about it? And Rome's like, what are we going to do about it? I'll show you what we're going to do about it. So they go to Greece and they burn Corinth to the ground. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But Rome then decides to take its anger out on Carthage. So They also burn Carthage to the ground. And they kill every single Carthaginian. So all the people dead that were soldiers. The ones that weren't soldiers, the women and children, sold into slavery. So they became slaves of the Romans. And then what the Romans did is they plowed salt into the ground. And the reason why they did that is so that if any group tried to plant things in this land, the plants wouldn't grow because the salt would suck out the moisture. So this is a way Rome is trying to make it so that Carthage is never a problem again. So they kill all the soldiers. They make the women, children, and women and children and the people that surrendered, they make them slaves, and then they plow salt into the ground so that nothing could ever grow there. Sometimes I get this question like, can stuff grow there today? Well, yeah, because it's been thousands of years. So this war lasts 3 years in Punic War 3. Well, this is a little bit more of what happens next. So after Rome takes care of Carthage, Corinth is like, hey, Rome, we had a deal with Carthage, and now that you've destroyed them, we can't get our money. You owe us. And Rome's like, oh, you owe us? I'll show you. And they go to Corinth, and they burn it down, like I said. And while they're there, like, Greece seems like a lovely place. Let's conquer it. And they do. So down goes every Greek city-state except Sparta. Now, Rome. Oh, well, so here's the thing. Sparta is not Sparta by this time. The This is Sparta days are kind of over. So what ends up happening is when Rome gets to Sparta, the Spartans, they still have their agoge, and they're like, this is Sparta, blah, blah, blah. And the Romans are like, this is Sparta? And Sparta's like, yes, this is Sparta. Blah. And Rome is like, this poor farming land is Sparta? And the Spartans are like, yes. So Rome is like, all right, this is so not worth it. And they leave the Spartans alone, and it becomes like a joke. What eventually happens is the Romans go like on vacation to Sparta and watch the Spartans like train and stuff. And it's almost like if you went on vacation to like Amish country or colonial Williamsburg or things like that. So you could see like people acting how they did back then. Rome is like, haha, silly Sparta. So Sparta is under the Romans' control, but they treat them as like a little tourist attraction. And Sparta thinks Sparta in their mind is like, we're in control, but really they're in Roman control, and Rome is going to kind of eventually put an end to the Spartans. Picture it like a candle that eventually just sputters out. That's Sparta. So Rome continues to conquer until they control the entire Mediterranean region. So Rome eventually, after Punic War 3, they're going to get Greece, they're going to get Carthage, they're going to get Spain, and then eventually Rome's going to make its way down here. So you can see the extent of their conquering. So they start off just Greece, and then they get the islands. Then they take over Spain. Then they take over parts of Carthage and Greece. Then it expands and expands. So what you're seeing here, all the different colors, is eventually how big Rome is going to get. All right, so in our little chart, Punic War 3. Here we go. So Rome starts it because Carthage is gaining power, and Rome's like, I don't want to deal with Carthage anymore. This is ridiculous. So Rome burns Carthage to the ground, kills all the Carthaginian soldiers, or which is, you know, a good chunk of the people, and the people that aren't soldiers, like the women and the children, makes them slaves. They plowed salt into the ground so that Carthage would never be a problem again. And they burned Corinth and took over Greece. So eventually Rome is going to control the entire Mediterranean Sea region, because when I show you this, look, eventually they're going to control all of this, which means every little piece of the Mediterranean Sea is going to be eventually controlled by Rome. Now, back to this chart. So, in the end, Carthage has no city. it got burned to the ground. Has no people because they're all dead or made slaves. And the land that used to be Carthage, you can't grow anything there because of the salt in the ground. So the winner of all three Punic Wars, that's the Romans. So Punic War 1, Rome started it, Rome wins. Punic War 2, Carthage starts it, Rome wins. Punic War 3, Rome starts it, Rome wins. All right. So now it's time for my awkward stop recording motion.